Hi friends, welcome to my channel. In today's video, we will be setting up my February reading journal. But before we set up the spreads, I need to fill out my reading journal annual spreads. The first one is my bookshelfie. So I already filled out two of the books that I read this month, the Rhino Keeper and Good Dirt, because I wanted to make an Instagram reel with it, but I'm still going to be filling out the remaining ones. And I only realized too late that I was using the wrong Tombow color for this one. So I went in after this video was filmed to kind of fix the color a little bit. If you want to see how I set up my reading journal for this year, I will be sure to link the video in the description below. The other books that I read this month is The Pickleballers, The Librarians of Lisbon, The Raven Scholar, A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping, Fathomfolk, There Are Rivers in the Sky, Shadows of Marrakech, and The Queens of Crime. A total of 10 books read this month, which is quite a lot, especially for a short month like February. The next spread that I track is my Goodreads challenge, and my goal is 54 books with a bonus up to 100. I tend to color the books that I read for that month with the same color. And like I mentioned earlier, I did mess up for the month of February, so I did go back after this recording to fix it. This month brought my total to 19 books read so far in 2025, which puts me way ahead of my reading goal. The next one is my A to Z challenge, or some people call it the alphabet challenge. And this challenge, you basically read a book that starts with each letter of the alphabet. I was able to read quite a lot of letters this month. I read Pickleballers for P, Librarians of Lisbon for L, Fathomfolk for F, Queens of Crime for Q, and There Are Rivers in the Sky for T. The next annual challenge that I track is my book bingo, and this month I managed to hit 2 of the squares. First, it was read a sci-fi or fantasy by a BIPOC author, and for that one I read Fathomfolk. And the next one is to read A Doorstopper, which is a book that has more than 700 pages. And for that one, I read The Raven Scholar. The next challenge is my buzzword challenge, where you read a book that contains one of these prompts in the title. I was able to fill out the prompt 2 and 2 with the book A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping. I also filled out water-related words for the book There Are Rivers in the Sky, but I forgot to put the cover in it, so I will be adding that offline. My favorite book this month was The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson. In terms of series, I started 2 new series this month, Eternal Path and Drowned World. I only read 2 of my physical TBR books, Fathomfolk and There Are Rivers in the Sky. My next read is my ARCs tracker, and I think I did a pretty good job at hitting my backlog on ARCs this month. 7 of the books that I read were ARCs, so that is pretty good. My next reading challenge is Read the Rainbow, where I read a book whose cover is one of the colors of the rainbow. I managed to read blue, red, pink, and purple. I'm almost done with this challenge. All I need is a yellow and a white, and that's very exciting. This is so early in the year too. Next spread is my historical fiction book club, and the book that we picked for the month of February is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak. And this was a really good book. I highly recommend it. It made from some very great book club discussion. Although I'd be honest, I hadn't finished the book at the time that we had our book club, so I literally had to cram it all up the next day. In terms of my reading goals, I did manage to read 1 more country in Africa, and that was Morocco. Again, I failed at reading the sub-book of the month for that month. I don't know why I even subscribe. I just like collecting books. I don't think I'll ever read them. My NetGalley ratio did go up to about 57%, so that's pretty good. Well, not good enough, but still better than it was. Next up is my social media trackers, and thank you so much for all of the love and following me on these social media channels. It's been great filling out these little bubbles for every time I hit a little milestone in my follower account. So now let's get started with my monthly cover page and book stats. I really wanted to use these stickers that I bought from Papermated Studio from her latest release. I'm obsessed with this release. It's so beautiful, and you'll see me using her stickers throughout this setup. The washi tape is also from Papermated Studio, although I don't know if this is still on her website or not. It was from a Black Friday sale last year, so I don't know if she still has them or not. If you've seen my January setup video, you'll know that my cover pages act also as book stats. I've ended up splitting this 2-page into 5 sections. The first page is split in half. The first top part is just like a tiny little cover page that says the name of the month that we're on. And then the bottom half is a list of all of the books that I read that month, along with their rating. This just makes it a lot easier for me to see at a quick glance what books I read for which month. And then the second page is more stat heavy. I tend to track a lot of elements for the books that I read, and so I've categorized them into 3 sections. The first one is more related to the author, so that includes their gender, their race, their nationality. The second part is more genre related, so I track whether what I'm reading is fiction or nonfiction, adult versus YA, the genre itself, if there is any LGBTQ+ representation on the book or not. And then the last section, this is where I just have a visual of the number of books for each of my ratings that I give them from a scale of 1 to 5. And then also the distribution of the method in which I consumed these books, be it in ebook format, an audio format, or a physical format. Since signing up for NetGalley, the number of my ebooks has skyrocketed, so I'm trying to read a lot more of those. And it's also easier to just bring your Kindle on the road rather than like an actual physical book, so I've been really enjoying the ebooks so far. After penciling out the layout of where I wanted everything to be, I just went in with some extra stickers to fill out the empty space. And then I used my stamps to stamp out Feb for the month of February. For my books read section, I only had enough space there to put down 6 lines with my Tombow dual brush pen, but I read way more than 6 books, so I feel like that space ended up being a little bit too crammed. In terms of the authors, 9 of the books that I read had a female author and 1 was a male author. 7 of them were white, 2 were Asian, and 1 was black. 5 of them were from the US, 4 from the UK, and 1 from Turkey. In terms of the genre, 10 of them were fiction. Well, all of them were fiction. I didn't read a single nonfiction. All of them were adult. 9 of them didn't have any LGBTQ+ rep. Only 1 of them did. I read 5 historical fiction books, 3 fantasy, 1 mystery, and 1 romance. Five of the books that I read had a 5-star rating, so this is a pretty good reading month. 2 of them had a 4-star rating, 2 of them had a 3-star rating, and only 1 had a 2-star rating. 5 of them I read in ebook, 4 of them were audio, and 1 was physical. The Tombow colors that I picked to color my stats this month are 942, 992, 228. So this was my cover page for the month of February, and now we're moving on to the first book that I read this month. The first book that I read is The Rhino Keeper by Jillian Forsberg. I received this book as an ARC in NetGalley, and I ended up doing the audio version of it. It is a breathtaking and deeply moving novel, and it brings to life the extraordinary journey of Clara, an Indian rhinoceros, and her devoted keeper, Captain Douwe Vandermeer, as they travel across 18th century Europe. This beautifully written historical fiction is told in dual timelines, seamlessly wearing together a present-day mystery with the vivid and captivating tale of Clara's adventures centuries ago. In 2022, college student Andrea Clarkson stumbles upon a gravestone with a rhinoceros carving, sparkling an unexpected historical mystery. Meanwhile, in 1740, Douwe acquires Clara and sets off on a journey to challenge misconceptions about rhinos, bringing awe and wonder to all who see her. While both narratives are compelling, I found myself especially captivated by Clara's timeline, where Douwe, along with young Zubin, Clara's caretaker, builds an unbreakable bond with this magnificent creature. From grand palaces to the rough seas, from the admiration of royalty to the struggles of survival, Clara's story is both heartwarming and heartbreaking. The author masterfully blends fact and fiction, filling in the gaps of Clara's real-life journey with imagination and care. Every moment, whether joyful, dangerous, or tender, felt alive, making me feel as if I, too, was traveling through 18th century Europe beside Clara. This novel is not just a historical adventure. It's a love letter to the deep connections between humans and animals. It reminds us that creatures like Clara are not just spectacles, but sentient beings who feel, trust, and love. In terms of the spread, I really wanted to use this new gouache paint that I received as a Christmas gift. And I've never used gouache before, so this is my first time doing it. So I knew I wanted to stick to the colors purple and blue to kind of reflect the book cover as well. And so I just painted this rhinoceros and tried to add some highlights here and there using a mixture of purples and blues. The cool thing with gouache is that it doesn't really matter what color you put first. So if I want to go back with a lighter color later on, that's totally okay. And it doesn't really mess up the painting, unlike watercolor. So this was like a very fun experience trying to paint a rhinoceros using gouache. I then watered down the gouache a little bit to make it lighter, and I just painted a little bit of the floor as a background for the rhino. I tried doing some highlights with a lighter color purple, but then I thought that wasn't enough. So at the end, I kind of went back with my white jelly pen, and I just added the highlights with my white jelly pen instead. Using my favorite stamps, I stamped out the title for Rhino Keeper. And the edges were a little bit too bland, so I just added some washi tape. I've had this washi tape for a while. I don't really remember what I've got it from. It was one of my early ones. I'm not sure where it's from, sorry. But any other materials that I use, I'll make sure to link it on the description. So this was my spread for the Rhino Keeper. The next book I read is Good Dirt by Charmaine Wilkerson. This was also an ARC I received in NetGalley. It's a historical fiction novel that delivers a compelling meditation on family history, trauma, and resilience. The story revolves around the Freeman family and their centuries-old stoneware jar, Old Mo, which carries both historical weight and personal significance. Wilkerson deftly weaves together multiple timelines, showing how a single object can serve as a through line between past and present. There were parts in this book that absolutely worked for me. Wilkerson's prose is beautiful, and she has a gift for evoking both emotion and setting. The historical sections, especially those tracing the origins of Old Mo in the 1800s, were some of the most compelling in the book. I also appreciated the novel's exploration of inheritance, not just in terms of objects, but also in emotional and psychological burdens families pass down. That said, there were also elements that didn't quite land. The novel's structure, while impressive in its scope, sometimes felt unwieldy. Certain storylines, particularly those involving some of the more peripheral characters, felt extraneous rather than additive, and I occasionally found myself disengaged during sections that veered too far from the novel's emotional core. In terms of the spread, the washi tape is from Lila Journals, and the pet tape is from London Gifties. The next book I read is Pickleballers by Ilana Long. I really wanted to like this book, you guys. I desperately tried. I should have DNF'd maybe like 10% into the book, but I kept going because I had high hopes. I mean, I love pickleball. I play it a lot. The book is set in the town that I live in. And so it has everything that I love and I enjoy. And I definitely enjoyed all of the scenery, descriptions that the author put down. I enjoyed the ferry rides. I mean, that's like my daily commute. I had very high hopes. And I was just like, it was so bad. This is the only book that I've given 2 stars this year. And I do not give out 2 stars. Like, it's very rare that I give out 2 stars to books. I'm a pretty generous star giver. So I was just very disappointed. I feel like this would make for a great Hallmark movie, and I would definitely watch it, but it was a waste of my time reading it. It was just very cringe. I don't know what to say. In terms of the spread, all of the stickers are from Pineberry Paper. I was really happy that she had the sticker sheet just for pickleball, and I feel like I'm going to need a duplicate of this one because it was so cute. The next book I read is The Librarians of Lisbon by Suzanne Nelson. I also received an ARC of this book on NetGalley. I really enjoyed this book. Like, I had no idea what role Portugal played during World War II, so it was fascinating to learn about its neutrality and how it became a hotbed of spies and refugees. The historical backdrop, especially the involvement of wolfram mining and its impact on the war, added an extra layer of intrigue that made me want to learn more. The story of Bea and Celine navigating their secret roles as spies while trying to maintain their friendship and unintentionally finding love amid war was compelling. I appreciated that the book followed both of their viewpoints, though their stories became so intertwined toward the end that it was a little bit confusing. The mystery element of figuring out who was really on which side kept me engaged throughout. While I thought the pacing was solid and kept me entertained, I do feel the ending was a little rushed. I also wish we had gotten some more insights into their training at the farm before arriving in Portugal. They often relied on skills they learned there, but without much background, and it was hard to gauge just how prepared or unprepared they truly were. A little more depth into that area would have made the journey even more believable. Bea and Celine were both strong characters, but I had mixed feelings about Bea. She came off as self-righteous at times, especially in how she inserted herself into her friend's dangerous missions, convinced that she knew best. I didn't really love Bea and Gable's romance either, but I was really interested in Celine and Luca, which made their fate even more heartbreaking. That said, love in wartime has its own intensity, and the relationships, cheesy moments and all, added complexity to the story. Overall, this was a good read that shed light on an often overlooked part of World War II history, particularly the role of women in espionage and Portugal's unique position in the war. In terms of this spread, I wanted to use the Paperminted Studio stickers one more time, and I thought it would be perfect because you have like this little girl hiding a book or a notebook or something. And then the washi tape as well is from Paperminty Studio. This little sticky note where I added the book cover and the star rating, those are also from Paperminty Studio. Overall, I'm obsessed with her stuff, so I cannot wait to see what other collections she drops this year. The next book I read is The Raven Scholar by Antonia Hodgson, and this was my favorite book for the month of February and probably my favorite book for 2025. I know, we're only in February, but I can tell it's going to be hard to beat this one. For this read, I was inspired by the Fairy Loot sticker sheet that I received a while ago for the Raven Boys, and I thought it would be a little bit fitting creating something similar for this book since it includes ravens, as you can tell from the title. Now, I received an ARC of this book as well as NetGalley, and like I said, it's been a while since I've read such a well-written fantasy book. I could not put this book down. It was so good. I did not want it to end. Even though it was like 700 pages, I was like, can I have more, please? Because this is just pure perfection. I am so excited for this book. I think it comes out in April. I don't know the exact date, but if you guys can get your hands on it, I highly, highly recommend it. It's one of the best books I've read in a long time. The book had me hooked from the very first chapter. The world, immersive and sprawling, the characters so vivid they felt real, and the stakes impossibly high. And this before the real story even begins. From the opening prologue, set years before the main plot, but already bursting with intrigue, you can feel the weight of history pressing down on every page. There's an exile, and then years later, an empire on the brink of change. The emperor is stepping down, and 7 factions put forth a candidate to take the throne. But when the Raven candidate is murdered on the eve of the competition, our protagonist, Nima, is forced to step into a deadly political game while also investigating the murder. You know that rare feeling when a book setting is so meticulously crafted that it feels lived in? From crumbling cities to opulent halls, from famous poets to whispered myths, every piece of this world feels intentional. The 8 mythological beings that guide the factions add layers of complexity, influencing character dynamics and political maneuvering in ways that are endlessly compelling. And the mystery, even though it's such a small part of the book, it was so well crafted. There's nothing like a ticking clock, a house full of suspects, and secrets waiting to be uncovered. The mystery is so well woven into the larger narrative that it feels essential rather than an afterthought. And then you have the competition, trials, duels, political scheming, everything that you want from a high-stakes contest for the throne is here. But what I loved the most was how these challenges weren't just tests of brute force. Strategy, alliances, and unexpected twists kept everything fresh. And our main character isn't always the strongest, and that's okay. I've read a lot of fantasy, okay, and I can usually see plot twists coming a mile away. But this book, it got me multiple times. I genuinely don't know how I'm supposed to survive the wait for the next book. I just want this book to come out like now. This is the worst feeling when you read an advanced reader's copy of a book that you absolutely love. It hasn't even come out yet, and yet, who knows when the next book is coming out? In terms of this spread, the pet tape is from London Gifties, and then the sticker is from Sticky Club. The next book I read is Fathomfolk by Eliza Chan. Now, I've had this book in my physical TBR for quite a while now, so I finally got around to reading it. This is a political adult fantasy, even though, in my opinion, it reads a little bit very YA. It's set in the semi-submerged city of Kiankao. The story focuses on half-siren Mira, her partner Kai, who is a water dragon, his sister Nami, an aristocratic water dragon, and Cordelia, a second-generation sea witch. One of the main conflicts of the novel is that unrest between the human world and Fathomfolk. Mira is a headstrong character and the first female captain of the border guard, appointed to assist in easing the tensions between the humans, Fathomfolk, and extremists, as well as promoting reform. The story is told in third-person point of view with an alternating focus on different characters situated across the land and sea. The multiple perspectives were a bit confusing at times as the focus shifted frequently, sometimes within the same chapter, which made it a bit difficult to discern which character and location the current setting related to. In terms of this spread, the pet tape is from London Gifties. The washi tape that I use, I bought that at a small stationery shop in Japan, so I don't really have a link for that, unfortunately. The next book that I read is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandanna. I screamed when I received this arc. I was so excited. This is definitely one of my most anticipated reads this year, so thank you so much to Berkeley for granting my wish on receiving this arc. This is the same author who wrote The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches, which was one of my favorite books a few years back when I read it. And this book had the same cozy vibes as that one. If you haven't read that one yet, I highly recommend it also. In the midst of this chaotic, shitty world we're living in, this book came as a true balm for my soul. Sangu Mandanna has woven the perfect tapestry of cozy inn vibes and found family magic that held me in ways I never expected. The story follows Sarah Swan, once one of Britain's mightiest witches, who finds herself stripped of her powers after resurrecting her great aunt Jasmine, making a deal with a semi-villainous talking fox, and facing exile from her magical guild. Now, reluctantly, and with just a touch of grumpiness, Sarah is tasked with running a ramshackle inn in Lancashire. Amid quirky guests and enchanting shenanigans, she dreams of reclaiming her lost magic and a future brimming with possibilities. The twist arrives when Sarah discovers an old spell book that might hold the secret to restoring her powers. This book comes out in July, I believe, and I'll definitely make a post to remind people again, because it was so good. Everybody needs to read this. The stickers I'm using are a mix from Marigona Sully art and Sticky Club, as well as Pineberry paper for the window. I'll try to link everything on the description. The next book I read is There Are Rivers in the Sky by Elif Shafak. This is the second book that I've read from her, and I really love her writing style. She is starting to become one of my favorite authors. There are 3 stories in this book. We have Arthur Smith, based on the Assyriologist George Smith, born to a poor family who has a phenomenal memory and a brain that works like no one else's. He begins his working life in a publishing house, where his vast intellect and curiosity are encouraged by his employers, but his real passion and interest in Nineveh begins when he sees the Yamaso sculptures being brought to the British Museum. Secondly, we have Zelika, recently split from her husband and contemplating her life choices. Her interest is in the rainfall and its life cycle. She moves to a houseboat and meets a tattooist who reignited her interest in cuneiform. Finally, we have Nareen, a young Yazidi girl who lives on the banks of the Tigris. Her grandmother is determined that her favorite niece should be baptized in the valley of Lalish in Iraq. The stories are often quite emotionally fraught and deal with some heavyweight issues, such as the rise of ISIS, the destruction of the valleys by the construction of domes, sale and removal of historical artifacts. In setting the story, Shafak gives us a wonderful backdrop to the city of Nineveh, which was destroyed by fire after civil war. It was home to a vast library, which held the clay tablets now at the British Museum. The history of the city is fascinating, and the way the author weaves the ancient history into the story of these 3 people is sublime. In terms of this spread, I used a scrapbooking paper that I had with the tiles. And then I used my Wearingold ink to create the border around it, but unfortunately the ink bled and feathered a lot and it kind of ruined my previous spread, which was a little bit of a bummer. And then it just didn't come out as I was expecting it to be. It's just this paper is not really meant for heavy loads of ink. The next book I read is Shadows of Marrakech by Philip Brebner. I also received this as an ARC on NetGalley. This book takes readers on a journey through the vibrant streets of Marrakech, where Ramsey, a disillusioned Scottish scientist turned bed and breakfast owner, finds himself entangled in a murder mystery that shakes up the exotic calm of Riyadh Waki. The premise of Scottish detective navigating the chaotic world of hotel management while trying to solve a murder is intriguing, and the setting really shines with rich descriptions of the city's highlights, winding alleyways, and the majestic Atlas foothills. The characters are diverse and engaging, especially Ramsey, as he dons his detective hat and wades through the complexities of his guests and staff. The dynamic with Paul's enigmatic wife Nicole and the suspicious connections to the past add layers to the plot. I appreciated the blend of comedy and tragedy as Ramsey's investigation takes unexpected turns, from traditional rituals to exploring deep-seated prejudices. However, while the narrative had its thrilling moments, I found myself feeling a bit bored at times. Some sections dragged on, and the pacing felt uneven. There were parts where I craved more action or sharper intrigue to keep me fully engaged. Overall, this book offers a unique mix of mystery and cultural exploration, but it could benefit from a tighter narrative to maintain momentum. In terms of this spread, I started using my Karin markers to color in the red shape, but I noticed that my markers were kind of like degrading and I was worried I was going to ruin them, so I switched to gouache instead, and I kind of like the gouache way better. To keep it with the same colors of the book cover, I stuck to the red and pink, and I just tried to create some kind of like shapes around the border. Didn't really have anything in mind, honestly. I was just like dotting points here and there, trying to make it look cohesive and even. I wanted to make like little flowers, but my gouache skills are just not good. I have a hard time like handling the brush, or like I put too much pressure on the brush, so like nothing comes out as thin and concise as I wanted to. I still need to practice. The last book that I read in February is The Queens of Crime by Marie Benedict. I also received this as an ARC on NetGalley, and funny enough, this is going to be my book club pick for March for the historical fiction book club. So I guess like I've already read the book for March. This book is a delightful blend of historical fiction and classic mystery, bringing together some of the most celebrated female crime writers of the 20th century, including Agatha Christie, Niall Marsh, Marjorie Allingham, and Baroness Emma Orczy, led by Dorothy L. Sawyers, as they attempt to solve a real-life murder. When a young nurse is found strangled in a park, the authorities seem all too eager to dismiss the case, but these pioneering women, eager to cement their place in the male-dominated literary world, take it upon themselves to unravel the mystery. Benedict does a fantastic job weaving historical details with a cleverly plotted whodunit. The novel is richly atmospheric, capturing the literary circles and social struggles these women face. The mystery itself is compelling, with plenty of twists and ruthless characters to keep readers hooked. While the ultimate resolution may not be the most surprising, the real charm of this book lies in the journey. Watching these intelligent, determined women collaborate, challenge societal norms, and forge deep friendships along the way. It's a thoroughly enjoyable read, one that could easily translate into a compelling TV series or a film. I'm talking to you, HBO, or Max, whatever you're called now. In terms of this spread, all of the pet tape that you're seeing is from London Gifties. So these were all of the books that I read this month. If you've made it so far, please don't forget to leave a comment below, letting me know what your favorite read this month was. I love to hear from you. And now, here's a final flip through of everything.